Okay, we are here with Andrew Erdos, and um, Andrew's based in Paris, and he lived here in Bucks County. He grew up here, and was a student of Carl's. And Andrew, I wanted to ask you, um, how did you first get started in glass?
Well, I first got started in glass as a student of Carl's in 2001, autumn 2001, when I was a sophomore in high school, and I was able to take glass blowing classes at the Bucks County Community College.
That's great. So that was in um, where the glass studio is now, right?
No, it was actually in the previous studio, which I believe was called the Barn. So
Right.
it was um, at the other end of campus in the big parking lot, and it shared the infrastructure with the place where I think they kept the snow plows and the lawnmowers, and a totally different, very isolated experience. And of course, an isolated experience, but a tight knit group of people.
Right, right. That's what I've heard. It was just yeah, like it's just a different vibe down there.
Completely different vibe, and um, architecturally different, psychologically different. You're really surrounded by the infrastructure of making and repairing things, and you're really in a sort of this island of parking lot with the park beside you. So that the focal point is literally the furnace, the flame, the light of the heat coming off of the glass. There's no other distractions when you're in that building.
Right,
Or how I remember it. Obviously this is 20 plus years ago now.
right, right. And so, did you ever take any courses in the studio where it is now? Where that
I Yes, I was part of the first group of people, and I remember, of course, going and seeing the new building in progress with Carl and talking about it with him and the other students, and um, it's just such a how do you say it? Like the legacy expanding or whatever expression you want to use, but the new building, the new studio, the new infrastructure, and it was not only was it part of campus, it was really like a focal point of the art department and the focal point of campus. And just such a great studio, and really. And I know it sounds like a cliche expression, but really very very formative time of my life.
right, I'm sure. And did that experience, like seeing that studio being built, did that um sort of inspire any studio practices that you've had since then?
Um, I don't know if the new studio per se did, because at that point it was really at right after the moment where the decision had been made, and I was applying early decision to Alfred University to focus on glass. I had decided that I would be pursuing art, specifically sculpture with glass, as my career. So, the new studio was wonderful because, of course, the facilities were better. But at that point, I think I had already made the decision as to
Hmm.
what my future would be. Once again, I know it sounds like such a cliche expression, but I can't emphasize enough how much of a formative time it was in my life, and it really did have a truly profound effect on me.
That's great. Um, and so now how long have you been based in Paris then?
It's very new. I've been here for about 8 months,
Oh,
and I was living in New York and Brooklyn for 15 years before that.
oh wow. Okay. Um, may I ask what made you make the move?
Oh, to Paris? Well, my wife was from Paris, and we were having, so as much as I love work, it was just a much more course. It's a beautiful city. I really appreciate being able to be here in the art scene in Paris, and there's a real, I think, a fundamentally different approach to education, fine art education, in terms of its integration of craft in America. So it's really great to be here as a contemporary artist working with the traditionally craft material and have the foundation of, understanding how to make things, being a maker, and then also being an artist, which of course I very much credit to being starting at Bucks as a teenager.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so how would you describe your your glass making and your sculptural practice? Have they like sort of come together as sort of this one sort of focus?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's entirely the same. It's entirely the same thing. And I think, especially at this point, there's the artists, the craft person, the maker, the thinker. They're all in the same. They're all in the same space. They occupy the same space, and it's the same object can be completely valid from any of those starting points.
Got it, got it. And so I guess I'm jumping around a little bit here. So when you went to Alfred, then did you continue making glass? Did you then move to Brooklyn after that?
Right. So, I was very fortunate because I started working with glass when I would have been 15. So when I arrived in Alfred, I already had 3 years of experience. And a lot of people who start working with the material as an undergraduate, the traditional BFA program is 4 years. You begin working with the material your second year. So you actually only have 3 years of experience working with that material. And because I'm so fortunate, and really can't emphasize enough how fortunate I was to study with Karl, I had actually had a substantial amount of experience before I enrolled as a freshman in college. And since I had this foundation, understanding the material and understanding the process, I was really able to focus on glass. But since I wasn't learning per se from the beginning, obviously it's a learning process that never starts, but I wasn't learning from the beginning. I was really able to really explore the material and explore other aspects of contemporary art. And despite having spent the majority of my time as an undergraduate working with glass, my final show was actually a video installation.
Oh, wow.
That being said, I feel I had so much glass experience that it was just kind of established that would be the how do I say, the foundation of what my studio practice would be for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And it allowed me a lot of freedom to explore other materials because I didn't have to spend the first few years just understanding the basics of how to operate with the tools, with the glass studio, understanding what the material was. And I can't emphasize enough how fortunate I was to have that opportunity at Bucks with Karl before pursuing the degree at Alfred.
Yeah, that sounds very unique. And so the pieces that viewers here will be able to see in the atrium gallery that you included in the show, they are part of a series that you call Animal.
Yeah, the animals. And so that was a series that actually I had been thinking about it for quite a while. I made the very first prototype of the animal in the summer of 2004. I would have been about 19 years old. And it was the very first animal was actually shown in an art show about artists protesting the war in Iraq.
Oh, wow.
And, the interior of the animal is usually coated with silver the show, of course, that you've put together has two animals, one of which is coated in silver on the interior, and the other is coated with 24 karat gold. And when I was starting this, we were really in a unique, in my opinion, a very unique time in human history where the transformation of digital technology was now beginning to fully integrate in a new way into cognitive human function. And to emphasize my point, I just want to point out the obvious that you are in Pennsylvania and I am in France talking to you on an iPhone, and we're having a live real-time video conversation, which if you think about in 2004, that was science fiction. That was 2001 Space Odyssey, that was Star Wars. The portal per se that we're actually literally interfacing with now, where I'm perhaps going back in time 6 hours to speak to you, or you are going 6 hours into the future to speak to me. Mm-hmm. So mundane now. But when the animal started, it was really this idea of, okay, technology is at a tangible turning point. The smartphone is being introduced. The internet is now rapidly evolved into a situation where it has replaced, per se, the importance of a lot of the natural elements in our world. And just to think about the idea of, starting this series in 2004, and then in 2010, 2011, beginning to really, really explore the series and this concept. So, the iPhone arrives in 2008? FaceTime arrives shortly after, but we're beginning to enter this new world where Wi-Fi, the digital experience, has fully changed the human cognitive experience to the point where, if there's a major blizzard, it causes problems in the Northeast. If Wi-Fi stops working in Lower Manhattan, the New York Stock Exchange shuts down and the entire global economy stops. Can you imagine that? Something that didn't exist in the 90s is now so important that if it stops working for 15 minutes in one 10 square block part of the city, the entire planet is affected. I mean, it's a pretty profound experience and a very profound situation where we're in. So, the animal is the sort of the neutral observer of the transition between the natural world, the industrial world, and it is a futuristic object. But of course, the aesthetics of it, it's, the silver, the animal, it's kind of how the future would have been designed in, how do I say it? like when you think of like movies where the future is portrayed, it's actually how they're portraying the future in 1960. It's that's aesthetic of like, what would the future be like? And then you're actually in the future and you're like, oh, it's different. Of course. So I would say the animal is really just a neutral observer of that profound shift in both human cognitive function and technological function, and the way that it will mix and change and things will be different. And, you don't have to answer this, but of course, if you think of, okay, the year is 1999, how many phone numbers do you know off the top of your head? A lot, right?
Yeah. In memory, yeah. And now it's just, I remember my phone number to, put it in the grocery store, like.
Right, exactly.
To get points. So yeah, it's in some ways debilitating. But I like the animals.
It's phenomenal, and the animal was really, I believe, created at the time to mark this cognitive shift. And of course, it's a mirrored object. So you see yourself in the reflection, you see yourself in the object. And if another viewer looks at the object and has a completely different experience or reaction or any of those things, it's it's literally a mirror, it's a reflection. So their response, their emotional activation is just as legitimate or valid as what I'm saying now. This is just, of course, my, my personal observations with it.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I like that it's like you said, a casual observer, but it's still a harbinger of sort of what things will become and what have become.
And what had become, right?
Yeah, great. Well, I can't. At this point, we're talking about a little in the future as well. Like, and I can't wait to install them. And but by the time people view this, they will be installed. So it's all very talking about the future and time zones and sort of
The
time
future.
travel.
That's not my quote. That's a quote from Namjoon Paik, but it's, I think, pretty relevant.
Yeah. Well, in just I wanted to ask just one other question, and it's, if you don't have one now, it's no problem. But I was just wondering if you had any certain memories or stories of Carl that you would want to share with the viewers.
Well, I think my relationship with Carl, it's really really profound for me because I started working with glass as a teenager, and it's not as if I was per se like lost in my life, but I was a teenager. I didn't have a direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and the opportunity to study glass at that age really did give me a focus. It did give me a direction. It was something I was very focused, like really as a 17-year-old, as a 16-year-old, extremely concentrated on, and not only as my passion, but as an activity I did over time that really helped me understand myself.
Mm.
And in terms of specific memories, there was a teacher's assistant who worked with Carl, who I believe was named Stephen. And Stephen had a very unique voice. And whenever the piece was like kind of finished, and you could see that the artist was hesitating, the maker was hesitating. And that's usually when the piece breaks. It's more or less finished, and then there's a hesitation, and Stephen would just scream like, "Put it away, put it away!" And I'm not joking. I mean, to this day, I am in the glass studio regularly, and I'm having that moment of, well, is this it? Is it not it? Do I change it? Do I sit and evaluate the situation? And I hear Stephen and Carl in the first row of the chairs in the first row of the studio, screaming like, "Put it away, put it away!" I hear it, and I'm like, okay, that's the moment. The glass piece goes away, but of course, it's also a metaphor for the bigger picture of life, and it's not just about like, oh, the glass piece is finished; it will break if you heat it up too many times. It's like, okay, the moment is here. The time is now. Make a decision. Just do it.
Right. That's wonderful. I really like that memory. Well, I'm gonna stop recording, and then but I really wanted to thank you for taking your time this evening and sharing your thoughts about your practice and also your memories.
Oh, and I can't thank Carl enough. I can't thank Bucks County Community College enough. And I know it sounds like a cliche expression, but it really has had a truly profound effect on my life and a truly profound impact, and really given me a direction. And I'm just so grateful to be here, and so grateful that I could have been a part of it.
That's great. Well, thanks again.